Ladies and gentlemen, as we begin our services, if we can please kindly turn off all cell phones or electronic devices, or please place them on silent. Thank you.
We begin our service in memory of Jerry Ritigstein with King David's faithful words, the 23rd Psalm. Mizmor David Adonai roi lo echsar, b'no deshe yarbitzeni, amei menuchoti na'aleini. Nafshi shovei v'yancheni b'magalei tzedek l'man shemo, gam ki elech b'geit salmavet lo irara, ki ata imadi. Shivtecha mishantecha hema yenachamuni. Ta'aroch lefanai shovan neged zorarai dishanta v'shemen roshi kosi revaya ach tov chesed yirdefuni kol yemei chayai v'shavti b'veit Adonai la'orech yamim. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside the still waters. He guides me on paths of righteousness. He revives my soul for the sake of his glory. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I fear no harm, for you are with me. Your staff and your rod do comfort me. You set a table in the sight of my enemies. You anoint my head with oil. My cup overflows. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall abide in the house of the Lord forever. In the rising of the sun and in the going down, we remember Jerry. In the blowing of the wind and in that chill of winter, you will remember your father. In the opening of the buds and the rebirth of spring, you will think of your husband. In the blueness of the skies and the warmth of summer, you'll always remember your brother. In the rustling of the leaves and the beauty of autumn, you will remember your grandfather. And in the beginning of the year and when it ends, you will remember the life he lived. When you are lost and sick of heart, you will once again turn to him for guidance and advice. When you have joys and celebrations yearning to share, he will be there with you. For so long as you live, he too shall live, for he is forever a part of you as you remember him. The mysteries of life and death are beyond human understanding, and we are pained and perplexed when anguish befalls those whom we love, and sorrow confronted by death. We mourn the passing of Jerry Ritigstein. We pray, dear God, Shepherd of Israel, that you guide us with love and compassion. Grant solace and comfort to those who mourn. May their lives together help to sustain them and add to the blessing which is theirs in the memory of the life of their beloved. In the valley of the shadow of death, beside still waters and in green pastures, you, O Lord, are our shepherd. Be our strength and our shield, our stay and our comfort throughout all our days. And together we say, Amen. Good people, it is with heavy hearts that we come together to pay tribute to Jerry Ritigstein. Kind, caring, generous, his giving spirit and helping hands will be sorely missed by his family, by his friends, by his patients, and by everyone whose lives he touched. Yesterday, Hindu, when we sat together in your beautiful home in Voorhees, as you were seated there in the midst of your children and your grandchildren, you looked like a diamond being held aloft by the baguettes, the beautiful family that you and Jerry raised with your own hands and with your own hearts. So today we come to comfort you and that beautiful family in the wake of this loss. As most of you know, Jerry was a psychologist, he was a therapist, he was more than a therapist, he was a therapist's therapist. He was the one others could go to understand more about their chosen craft. He was the one they could turn to for guidance and for advice. And as you know, psychologists often encourage us to analyze our childhood to better understand where we are, where we came from, and where it is we might want to go. And Jerry Ritigstein is living proof of just how good a process that really can be to understanding who we are. Because so much of Jerry's adult life was the result of his childhood and the way that he himself was raised. His parents, your parents, William and Rose, came from Europe for a better life, and they worked hard to provide for their 3 children, for your sister Ellie, for you, Irini, and for your little baby doll, your brother Jerry. Jerry was close to his family, to his parents, to his sisters, to you, Irini and Larry, who were like second grandparents in many cases to the children. He was a wonderful uncle and a granduncle, and I hope that all the memories that you share from him, all of those years, are a source of comfort and support, as are the love of the family of whom you were such an important part. Your father was a waiter, and we all know that one good way to judge a person's character is the way they treat their waiter or their busboy. Because just because a person is serving you doesn't mean that they're beneath you. And as a result, Jerry made sure that he treated everyone fairly, regardless of their station in life. He was non-judgmental. He accepted people for whom they were, not for what they could do for him. To say that Rini, you and Ellie and Jerry grew up in a house of modest means would be a bit of an understatement. But again, as a result of childhood, Jerry wanted to make sure that his family was well provided for, and so he worked hard day in and day out to assure that that happened. Jerry had to work hard to get a good education. He went to Brooklyn College, he served our country when he was drafted, and he returned older and more experienced to finish Brooklyn College. And then he continued to work hard to get his advanced degrees through his doctorate and beyond. But as a result of that whole tough climb, he made sure that you got a good education and that every opportunity was available to his children. Jerry took his responsibilities as a father very, very seriously indeed. And yet at the same time, his world revolved around you. And the truth is, as you said, that one of the things that attracted you to Jerry was that he was a responsible adult amongst a crowded field of boys. And of course, it didn't hurt that he was good-looking and a gentleman, too. And somehow, God knew that you were destined to be together, even if Jerry didn't realize that right away. After all, he didn't want to go on a blind date, and he only called you at 3 o'clock in the afternoon for a date at 6. And you really had to be set up by your brother and Larry, because we'll hear a little bit more about that, Shep, in a bit. But that was only more of an indication that this was your Bashert, that this is the one that God wanted you to share your heart with forever. And so it was on June 25th, 1967, at precisely 12 noon, in the Essex house in Manhattan, the two of you were wed. And from that day on, it was a true partnership. You complemented one another so very, very well. You each were happiest together, and yet also loved your individual lives and respected each other for that as well. And it was so touching, Indy, yesterday when you said to me, Jerry gave me the freedom to be me. The two of you empowered one another and obviously brought out the best in one another as well. And it was into that home that radiated that kind of love that you, Michael, and Eric were born. And you know how blessed you were to grow up with two loving parents in a stable and happy home, to see parents sharing love the way that yours did. Your dad worked long hours, as I know that both of you will speak of in just a few moments, but he was always there to make sure that you knew you were the center of his life. He was always there when you needed him, and he created quality time. He taught you both to take your responsibilities seriously, to work hard, to study hard, and above all, to be a mensch like your father was, and both of you are. I'm sure that both of you, when you were looking for that special someone, wanted someone who would give you the same joy of marriage that you saw your parents share. And with you, Stephanie and Andrea, they found it. Jerry appreciated how happy both of you made his sons. Both of you were like his daughters. He was supportive and kind. He gave great advice. And I think part of the reason why he was able to do that was because he really knew you, and he really cared about you. So he thought things through before he spoke, and his guidance, everyone, was something that you treasured. Each of you, both of you, had a special place in his heart. And from the four of you came the joy of being a grandpa. To you, Noah, Spencer, Drew, Jonas. You were all blessed, whether you called him Papi or Grandpa, to have him as a very special part of your lives. He was active and involved and into whatever you were into. If you had a project in school, he was there to help. If you were watching a football game, he wanted to watch it with you. And moreover, you wanted to be with him. And of course, he always wanted to give you gifts. And you said that you didn't really spoil the kids, but I'm not entirely sure that's true. And part of it was because, boys, he really loved you. But also, I think part of it was that he knew what it was like to do without when he was your age, and he wanted to make sure that you had everything your heart desired, but more importantly, how much he cared for each of you. Psychologists often speak of a person's EQ. That's their level of emotional intelligence, the way that they can read other people. And Jerry Ritigstein's EQ was off the charts. He was a fine judge of character. And that's because he was non-judgmental. He took the time to know people and appreciate them for who they were. And he knew, because he had lived on both sides of the tracks, and he came to understand that the tracks are meaningless. People are people, and they should be respected for who they are as individuals. And he taught his sons to treat everyone kindly. And Michael and Eric, that's exactly what every one of us knows you do each and every day. Both of you are the finest reflection of your father, of his love, and his guiding hand. Jerry Ritigstein was truly a self-made man, and at the same time, he gave himself freely. He wanted the best for everyone, for his family, for his friends, for his patients, for everyone he met. He knew how to make people feel, and this was words that I heard over and over again yesterday. He knew how to make you feel safe and protected. He was the consummate father, husband, father-in-law, and grandpa as well. And the warmth of his spirit will continue to guide your lives. His physical presence is no more, but his spirit lives on in all of you. So live fully and love deeply, and you'll forever be blessed by the heart of this very special man. So we pray to Nishmatot, Swarvitz, Chaim, the soul of Yosef Ben Meir, should be bound in the bond of eternal life. We're going to have the privilege of hearing from family members, and we're going to start with you.
Hello, everybody. Thank you for coming. Goodbye and thank you, my dear, dear Jerry. It's been almost 55 years in June 25th together. We had such a wonderful life. We traveled to so many places, enjoyed our many friends, and were content with each other. Both sides of our family got along so well. Both of us grew together, and yet we were able to create our own individuality, reaching our own goals and accomplishments. I was the talker, as most of you know, and he was the listener. But when he spoke, everyone listened. Jerry could tell a joke or a story, could express a deep intellectual thought, or interpret a person's feelings, all so perfectly. He was tops in his field as a therapist for well over 46 years. He gave love, loyalty, offered wisdom to his friends and relatives. Most of all, he was a family man, so devoted to his family, a wonderful role model to his sons, a fun-loving grandfather, and a terrific husband. Jerry was a man of integrity and generosity in so many ways. I will miss you so and will love you forever. Jerry dictated this to me, a short note, about a week before he died. He said, "Cry not for me. These past days surrounded by all the people I love and who love me, I have the opportunity to experience heaven on earth. So cry not for me as I have experienced heaven on earth."
Thank you. I'm going to call on you, Uncle Shep.
I'm so pleased to see so many people here. It was just last week, Linda and I, my wife, watched from Naples, Florida, the memorial service for Ed Rosoff. Another mensch. So I knew this room. Little did I think that I would be here in person. Let's talk about Jerry. It was about 56 years ago, and Reenie's husband, Larry, may he rest in peace, he and I met on the sidewalk of Shackman's men's store, and there we schmoozed. We schmoozed about Hinda and about Jerry, and we thought, what a good shidduch this would make. Well, it was tough because Hinda was so popular. She almost married Steven Spielberg. Our mother and father would spend the winter months out in Phoenix, Arizona, and my mother got to play bridge with Mrs. Spielberg, Steven's mother. And they spoke about fixing Steven up with Hinda. Now just think, if that happened, Steven would have fallen in love with Hinda, and we would have been on that 200-foot yacht that he just bought instead of here. But anyway, I think Larry and I did a very good job. I really didn't know Jerry before he married Hinda, but over the past 55 years, Jerry and I became very close. We had many things in common, I love the better brain. And Jerry had the better brain. It took a while for it to blossom, but when it did, oh my goodness, how it flowered. He had such insight into people. He listened, or I thought he listened, and he knew why and how people acted. He and I shared together several things. We were fressers. You know what fressing means, ladies and gentlemen? That means like we eat like animals. Jerry and I could have an hour's conversation whether to use Thousand Islands dressing or mustard on a tongue with chopped liver. Pizza. Oh my God. I don't know if you are pizza people here, but Jerry and I love pizza, and our second love is gambling. So many times we would go to Mohegan Sun and take a break for lunch, and we would go to Frank Pepe's Pizzeria. Now, I don't know how many of you know about Frank Pepe's, but this is the ultimate of pizza. And Rabbi, don't listen, but the clam pizza, white clam pizza, is spectacular. Jerry and I despise schnorrers. Now, do you all know what a schnorrer is? Somebody who takes. Well, Jerry and I would fight over the check. We'd go out together, we'd fight over the check, but I did not want him to feel like a schnorrer, so I let him pick up the check. You all know of his generosity. Unbelievable. Now, when we spoke about your father, Rini, we would never say Willie, it was Villy. Villy was the professional waiter. And Jerry would tell the story about how Villy could wait on a table of 10, take the order, not writing it down, that he had such a memory, and he would be able to correctly place the order, and then when it came out, give it to whom it was to be given. Jerry also had a spectacular memory, and he used this in playing blackjack. Jerry was a counter. He could count cards. And over the past 50 years, I would say Jerry actually made money gambling while I lost a small fortune. Jerry and I would talk about our professions. I was a lawyer, and early in my profession, I was what we call a matrimonial lawyer, divorce. So I would hear the source of my clients, and Jerry would hear the source of his patients. And we would talk about this. I said, Jerry, you know, over 40 years, you have listened to your patients. I said, how did you do it? And he said, who listened? Jerry was a great storyteller. He would tell jokes many times with a Yiddish accent. He was, again, you've got some older folks here. You remember Myron Cohen? Well, Jerry was a younger Myron Cohen, and he would tell stories. But even when he didn't tell stories with a Yiddish accent, he had to tell stories about Jews. So he'd go, When there were two Jews sitting on a park bench, I said, Jerry, why is it you have to tell stories about Jews all the time? He said, okay. He says, Moshe and Amy were sitting on the park bench. I loved his sense of humor. He was a great brother-in-law. He was more than that. He was a brother. And I will miss him very much.
Oh, I forgot. He was the most affectionate father. I had never seen a father kiss his son so much.
I want to first thank everyone for coming. People have come from all over the country. This is shocking and amazing to me. So, all walks of, all parts of my father's life, from when he was younger to when I was growing up, to the friends that he's made in New Jersey. So, I appreciate everyone coming. Thank you.
Michael, would you just get closer to the
Sure.
microphone?
Sure. My father told my family that he could no longer continue on dialysis on Tuesday, May 31st, 2022. While I was incredibly saddened, my father had suffered from kidney failure and Parkinson's disease, and I supported his actions due to how uncomfortable and miserable dialysis made him feel. We knew he had 10 to 14 days remaining on Earth until he would pass. My family and I spent time with my father after he told us his decision to discontinue dialysis. The first night, my father, a psychologist, tried to explain the meaning of life and death to my children. He explained that his death was not a tragedy, as he had lived 81 years and lived a wonderful life that exceeded all expectations. The next night, he described his life story to my children, telling them the background of his immigrant parents who came to the U.S. from Russia and Romania, the dysfunctional characters in the impoverished neighborhood where he grew up in Brooklyn, the gang he was in, his time in the Army, and the importance of education, and that my children should treat people with respect and kindness. The next night, it was 2 hours of joking around with my boys. I'm very grateful that my children got this opportunity to be with him. My father was a devoted husband who traveled the world with my mother and enjoyed a wonderful life together, splitting his time in Long Island and Florida, and most recently in New Jersey. He was a father-in-law, grandfather, brother, brother-in-law, uncle, and highly regarded psychologist and friend. Despite having all of these labels, my father told me he had the greatest and most proud role he had. During his life was being the father to me and my brother. I wrote him a letter a year ago when he first told us that he may want to discontinue dialysis. I would like to share the letter with you, which will describe my relationship with him. And please bear with me. I apologize if I get upset. Dad, I wanted to let you know the immense impact that you've had on my life and how much I appreciate all that you have done for me and how much I love you. As a child, teenager, and even as a young adult, I did not understand and was unable to see the sacrifices you made to make your family feel loved, protected, and safe. Looking back, I appreciate bedtime stories you would tell to me about your childhood and life in the military. The stories were so vivid, and some even taught me life lessons such as the importance of education and not to judge a book by its cover. I also remember stories that you read to me from the Grimm's fairy tale book that you brought back for me from England. Now, He probably shouldn't have read these stories to me right before bed because the children were often eaten by animals. Regardless, I appreciated it. Despite long days of work in which you were most likely exhausted and tired, you took time out of your night to be with me, to make me happy by sharing these stories. I'm so thankful to you for giving me that time and grateful for these memories. You never put me down for not being the best student or not being the best athlete, and always encouraged me, supported me, built me up, and made me feel like I was the best and loved. You always gave me good advice, but let me work through my problems, telling me I would come to the correct conclusions on my own and to take or leave input from others. I appreciate this sound advice. I believe this skill has helped me in my personal and professional life. You taught me to be kind. You told me never to make fun of others for being different. I appreciate that you never scolded me or made me feel bad for taking money from your Ernie piggy bank so I could get ice cream from the ice cream man. You provided me with experiences most people are not afforded, for which I need to thank you. I got to go to college, law school, went cross-country to see the great sights of America, and backpack Europe. I got to go on family trips in New England, Florida, and California, and across the country. These events are some of the greatest times in my life, which you and Mom worked so hard to provide for me, and I'm so appreciative. You always reiterated that you were my safety net, and that I should take chances. While I hope I never took advantage of the safety net, just having the knowledge of your support allowed me to start my own law firm, which has been the greatest success for me in my professional life, and I'm so glad that you have been able to witness this success, as you are one of the few people in this world whose opinion matters to me and who I want to make proud. Without your safety net, I would not be in the position I am today. I also love the bond that we share with our penchant for the stock market and gambling. As a 22-year-old kid, I took your advice to start investing in the stock market, and due to your guidance, I've been able to provide the lifestyle that my wife and kids enjoy. I'm following in your footsteps, and I'm providing the same knowledge to my boys. Also, I hope that one day, no matter where in the world my children live, I will be able to bring them together with me to Las Vegas to place bets on March Madness. When you were healthier, I loved watching you interact with my boys. I felt as though you would rather be with them than with the adults at family gatherings. This spoke volumes to me about your kindness to children and the importance of family. The kids would always have smiles on their faces when they were with you. They loved when you gave them moon shots on the swings. They were a little high for my liking when we pushed, but that's okay. Though you are no longer able to be as interactive with them as you once were, they still look forward to being with you. Dad, you are a true role model to me in every way. In emulating you, my number one priority in my life is my family. Nothing brings me more joy than being with my family, and I would do anything for you and for them. I used to wonder why you never spoke to friends on the phone on weekends or hung out with friends other than going out with couples with Mom on Saturday nights. And I now understand that you would rather spend time with your family than with others. I am so appreciative of all the time we have spent together, the memories created, and all of the time and effort you put into raising me, supporting me, and loving me. The other night you said that your children are your greatest success. You have far exceeded any and all expectations a child can have of their father. Your success as a father is far greater than you will ever know. You can never understand how honored, proud, and grateful I am to call you Dad. Thank you for being my father, provider, guiding light, sounding board, gambling buddy, safety net, and best friend. Please know that in the remaining time you have on earth, I will do anything and everything you need to make you feel loved, comfortable, protected, and safe, as you have similarly done for me throughout the course of my entire life. I love you, love Michael. I'm going to miss him terribly.
The last couple of weeks, as much as they were sad, have really been incredible. as you've all heard, my dad chose to end dialysis. And we knew when he did that, we would have a limited amount of time with him. And these last few weeks, we've been able to tell him in no uncertain terms how we felt about him. He's been able to tell us exactly how he felt about us. I can't imagine a better way to go than to be able to let everyone who you loved know exactly how you felt about them and them to you. I was present when he made a lot of phone calls to his oldest friends and dearest friends, and it was gut-wrenching listening to those phone calls, but at the same time, it was absolutely amazing to hear my dad and the people he loved most in this world be able to tell each other what they meant to each other. It's an opportunity I know my dad relished and wanted, and because he took it upon himself and ended things on his terms, he was in so much pain, he wanted to end it in his way, and he did, and he was able to tell the people he loved most exactly what they meant, and I'm grateful for that forever, and I know he was grateful for that. Growing up, my dad, he worked long hours. I mean, he'd leave early in the morning, he'd come home, it was dark out. We'd be sitting in the den after our own days at school, and he'd come home from a long day, we'd hear the garage door open, and then he'd come in his shirt and tie, and he would be so freaking happy. He would come in after the longest day. He must have loved his job because he would come home happy. He'd come in, he'd kiss us hello, and then he'd go upstairs. And we'd hear him going up those stairs, and he'd be singing. He'd be singing going up those stairs, getting most of the words wrong to whatever he was singing. But he was singing, and he was happy. And then he'd come downstairs, and he'd been in his blue bathrobe and his slippers. And he'd head out into the kitchen where my mom would always have it seemed like always have a tuna fish sandwich and a cup and a bowl of soup waiting for him. And somehow he was even happier. So, it just... Wednesday nights, the day you guys all probably know what Carvel is. It's an ice cream place, and they had something called Wednesday is Sunday at Carvel. So you'd go to Carvel on a Wednesday, and they'd give you a buy one, get one free Sunday. He'd come up, we didn't ask him for it. I mean, I don't remember ever asking for it, but he'd come home every Wednesday with a couple of Sundays. Now, this is something else that I didn't even think about until this last week. I didn't realize it until just in the last few weeks, how much ice cream meant to my dad. I really didn't know. Chef talked about pizza and some other food, but I never knew about ice cream. And my brother alluded to an Ernie piggy bank in my dad's office. Yeah, I gotta go backwards. Just yesterday when we were meeting with the rabbi, my mom, my grandpa Willie he probably didn't have much money, but what he had, I don't think he was that generous with. Thanks, yeah. And my mom told a story yesterday that I never heard, that the ice cream man would come around when my dad was a little kid. And my grandpa Willie would kind of run and hide because he didn't want to have to buy ice cream. He'd kind of duck out. My dad had this piggy bank in his office. It must have at any time, it was an Ernie piggy bank, Ernie from Sesame Street, said on it, play on words. A penny earned is a penny saved, it's Ernie piggy bank. And my dad would keep the thing filled with coins. I mean, probably hundreds of dollars worth of coins at all times. And it was specifically there because when the ice cream man came around, he wanted us, whenever the ice cream man came around, to be able to get ice cream from the ice cream man. It's all starting to make sense now about the ice cream. He also, over the last few years, he told me a story. I don't know why it stuck with me so much, but he told me he would get ice cream cones a lot, and one time he was eating an ice cream cone, and it's it struck him as funny and weird. A little boy walked by and said to his mom, "Look, Mommy, there's an old man eating an ice cream cone." I thought the story was funny, but again, it's fallen into this ice cream thing that I didn't really know about. And then the last 10 days, well, until about 3 days ago, my dad was still eating and drinking whatever he wanted, and because he was nearing the end of his life, there were, no holds barred. Eat whatever the heck you want to eat. He had a lot of Swedish fish, but more than anything, ice cream cones. He was doing 2 ice cream cones every single night, Cherry Garcia. And again, all these years, I didn't learn this news about the ice cream until recently. So, I'll tell a few stories about my dad growing up. He was very handy, but I wouldn't call him a master craftsman. Let's put it that way. And at some point, I or my brother, probably just me, asked for a treehouse. And that was not going to happen. So he suggested, why don't I, we had a lot of woods in our backyard. I don't know how many of y'all have been to the East Northport house, but there were woods in the backyard. So my dad said, I think he first looked, let me try and make a teepee. I thought we could cut down some of the trees and kind of put them together and make a teepee. And I think he started that project and then realized, this is kind of tough too. So my dad said, you know what I'm going to do? None of your friends have ever had one of these. We use them in the military. We're going to make you a lean-to. LEAN-TO, if you want to look up what it is. A lean-to. It sounded so great, and he made us the lean-to. Basically, it's just he cut down a couple of trees and leaned them against the fence. So over the last week or two, we've been telling a lot of stories. I reminded my dad. I said, Dad, do you remember when you didn't make me a treehouse? Yeah, maybe a lean-to. And he had a different memory, and I just remember a couple of trees against the fence. My dad said, that thing held for a long time. I guess I don't think we ever even noticed it. When my dad was in his early 40s, he noticed a lump on his neck. And he it was scary. He wasn't that scared for me, and I don't think we knew how serious it was, but my dad thought he was dying. He had a lump on his neck, and he'd been to a lot of doctors, and I think a few of the doctors thought it might be cancer, and that he might not have much time left. And he did a couple of things. He bought us a lot of gifts. I remember he bought me roller hockey skates I wanted. And my brother was in the Cub Scouts at the time. And they got something in the Cub Scouts called the Pinewood Derby. I don't know how many of y'all know what Pinewood Derby is. You get a little wooden thing that's going to become a car. Plastic wheels. And my dad took it upon himself. He was going to win that Pinewood Derby for Mike. So he was taking all the time to deal with his neck issue and whatever it might be. And he was in the garage working on this Pinewood Derby car. And my memory is him almost every day going to the hardware store for more silica gel. I don't know what it does. Maybe it weights the car or something, but he works on this Pinewood Derby car. And in the end, a huge thing. This isn't just like 5 kids. This is hundreds and hundreds. He took 3rd place in the Pinewood Derby. And 1st and 2nd place winners, their dads were both engineers. So, pretty good. The Comat Y. My dad, the Y in Comat. My dad, probably about a 25-year stretch, would go to the Y every day. He was in great shape. I mean, he would probably take, he worked in Comat, Long Island. That's where he had his office. And every day he would take some time and go to the Y and work out. It was a big part of his life. Cruel people at the Y, something about my dad that probably a lot of you know is the more you get to know him, the more you like him. He's not someone who, had a million friends and this and that. You get to know my dad. the more you know him, the more you know about him, the more you like him and love him. And he had a crew of guys at the Y. I mean, I can picture them in my head, just from all different kinds. And some of them just loved him for his stories. There was a young psychologist who I'm sure picked his brain for advice picked his brain for advice every day. But he was beloved at the Y. He was big into this thing. The crown jewel of the Y is fitness equipment. It wasn't like today where there's Stairmasters everywhere and steppers up and down. He had one Stairmaster. It was like the crown jewel of the Y, not like a stepper like this. You know, one of those real 4 stairs. You go up, and that was the piece of equipment at the Y when my dad was there working out. And they had a system there. Everyone wanted to use the Stairmaster. So you get in, you sign up, and you wait your turn, 20 minutes at a clip to use that Stairmaster. And that's what my dad did. I went with him to the Y one day, and you know, whenever I would go, everyone would kind of say, "Hey, when's your dad coming in? This is dad, and talk about your dad." There was a day there were these 18, 19-year-old girls, like sorority-ish people, and they were shooting daggers, staring daggers at my dad, and that was weird, you know, like, why that wasn't his crew. 18, 19-year-old sorority types were my dad's crew. So I asked him, "Dad, what's going on? Why are these girls, like, they hate you, it looks like. What is going on here? Why are these girls so mad?" "I don't know, we sometimes they sign up their friends. You know, they come in and they sign up all their friends on the Stairmaster, so I'm only there for a limited time to use it." "Okay, but they really look like they don't like you, Dad." I said something to one of them yesterday when she was signing up her friends. "You know what, can you tell me what you said? Because they really don't like you." I said to her, "At home you might be a princess, but here at the Y you're just a member." Yeah, that's about something. So the scariest moment of my dad's life. So these are some of the things that he's learned in the last several years. The beauty of cell phones is my commute to work the last 8 years. I'd be calling my dad almost every day. So I learned so much about him, his life, story. It was really incredible. Scariest moment of his life. He had his lock that he used at the Y every day. It was one of those master combination locks, you know, turn to the right, turn to the left. And there was some scam going on. My dad said it was the Russian mafia. I don't know how he knows that, but he said it was. Apparently they'd gotten a hold of the master combination, like the combinations for all of these master locks. And at the time, my brother was in law school he was living in Hoboken, New Jersey. And that's going to be important. So my dad, you know, he'd always use this lock and didn't realize it, but the scam was they would break into the lockers and they would go into the wallets inside the locker and they would take, I don't know how a criminal would know, they probably would have an idea, like a credit card that was not so often used, maybe the third one in the row or one that didn't look like it had much action. And then they would go charge something big. So my dad obviously didn't know that it had been stolen at the time, but the way he found out was at 3 a.m. he received a phone call. "Is this Jerry Ritigstein? This is Sergeant so-and-so with the New Jersey State Police." And my dad said that was the scariest moment of his life. Just assumed he was going to hear something about my brother. And turns out they just charged $600 to your credit card at some Italian restaurant in New Jersey. So, but scariest moment of his life. He got a new lock after that. He got one of those. He got one of those locks that have 4 numbers, and just 4 different numbers. And coincidentally, the numbers were 0811, which happens to be my wife Andrea's birthday. So he had that lock. People that had that lock for 20 years or so, and as most families probably at some point start talking about when's so and so's birthday, my dad would always chime right in, well, Andrea's August 11th. And my mom would always say, wow, he remembers it so well. Ace the cat. We had, growing up, we had cats. My dad, he couldn't have cared less about those cats. I don't think my brother and I could have cared for those. They were maybe my, sorry. We had cats, but my dad was definitely not like a cat lover. And then he got Ace, this big 25-pound cat, and he loved this cat, Ace. I would catch him talking to Ace, and he had a big one of those super soaker water guns that he would take in the back. It wouldn't shoot Ace with it. He would take it in the backyard and like spray it around the yard, and Ace would chase the water, and it became like a party trick for him. He really loved this cat. So one day Ace just disappeared. And my dad made signs, reward Ace. He put them all around the neighborhood. He really loved this cat. And I would say 1 to 2 weeks passed, and no response to these notices. My dad was at work, and he got a call from a little girl, like 10 years old. I think I might have your cat. And my dad immediately, closed up shop for the day, put a sign up for his patients. He called the girl, where do you live? It wasn't even anywhere near our neighborhood. And he zipped over to get Ace. And this little 10-year-old girl said, I think that's your cat under my car. My dad took Ace and gave the girl a reward and got back in his car and brought Ace home, was so excited. And then about 10 minutes later, he got a call from an irate woman. Did you just give my 10-year-old my 10-year-old daughter $50? Yeah, she found my cat. There was a reward. So that's my dad. So even though she had no idea there was a reward, gave her the $50. My dad was very happy. One of the reasons he was so happy that my brother and I both became professionals is so we wouldn't have to have back-breaking work for our entire life. Just again, a few months ago, I was talking with my dad on the phone, and I said, well, you're lucky, Dad, you and me, we would never get injured on the job. And he said to me, well, how do you know I never got injured on the job? Did you? Yeah, I did. I had a work injury. He's a psychologist. Not sure how he had a work injury. And he told me that early in his practice, when he was first building his practice, he would see children in addition to adults. And so my dad would sit in this rocking chair, and he would be across from the couch. And he said there was a little boy he'd been seeing for a couple of weeks and just wasn't making any progress. Said the kid had had some trouble in school and back-talking to the teachers and whatnot. And my dad said, I couldn't get anything out of him. And eventually I said to him, hey, where's that bad boy everyone's telling you all about? Where's that bad boy everyone's telling me all about? And the little boy picked up an ottoman and threw it at my dad, like with his thumb, and my dad was in a splint for 2 weeks. That was his work injury. I'm going to talk about the gambling with the preface that my dad let it be known to my brother and me from early on, you never gamble what you cannot afford to lose. This was pounded into us over and over and over again, and he never did. He was an incredible provider and never gambled more than he could afford to lose. And I'm going to make another comment about my dad. I think he's here today. A financial advisor who was helping him out. We were on the phone just yesterday having a conversation, and he indicated that my dad, more than anybody he's ever worked with his entire life, his entire career, in such painstaking detail, just wanted to make sure that my mother was comfortable financially, more than anybody. So he was very responsible as I launched into his family. Monday night, as when we were growing up, every Monday night was poker night. He loved those poker games. As long as I've known my dad, he's had poker games. sometimes once a week, sometimes more than once a week. Monday night was poker night, and so imagine there were about 8 people in the game. Every 8 weeks or so, we would have the game at our house. It'd be pepperoni. I know we'd come home from school and there'd be like pepperoni out or whatever you guys were eating. As it went on, I mean, I don't know how high the stakes were. They might have been pretty high. It started to seem like the earlier people got to the game, the more they were sort of into the gambling. They might get there a little earlier than 7. And I know there was a stretch where we'd get to come home from school, and there was one guy who had his car parked there at like 3 in the afternoon. Dad, maybe Colby needs an intervention. In the mornings or on the weekends, he'd be sitting at that kitchen table, my dad, playing cards, and Shep alluded to it. My dad, he wasn't playing blackjack. He was practicing counting cards. It looked like solitaire to us. Maybe Mike knew, but I didn't know what he was doing. And then over the years, started to realize he was practicing. He was counting. He was keeping the count on the cards, and he would sit there at the kitchen table and practice counting cards. He would take my brother and I to the Golden Nugget in Atlantic City. Sometimes, not too often, but enough that it was pretty special. He would get comped at the restaurants there, and go to eat with them and get the free meals. He'd say, "Mike, why don't you order a shrimp cocktail so I don't order 2?" And then he'd finish and say, "Eric, why don't you order a shrimp cocktail?" So, those hotel stays were the first time we learned about the organization table. My dad, in addition to being responsible and smart, he was so organized. Any hotel room we ever went to on any trip, we'd walk in the door and, all right, hold on. That's going to be the organization table. That's where we're going to keep the wallets, the room keys. Every time I walk into a hotel now, I'm looking. I walked up here and I thought, that's a little messy, that table there. But I'm always looking for the organization table. Where's the organization table? Belmont Park. Now we're not the horse racing. You like horse racing too. He told a story once that as a teenager, him and his buddies were at Belmont, and they went on to the backstretch. They got in on each other's backs, started running along the backstretch, and the people in the lobby started cheering for them. I thought it was a pretty funny story. When he would take us, we would go to the clubhouse. So the clubhouse, what it meant for us was we couldn't wear shorts. I think we might have had to wear a collared shirt. And it cost an extra $2 to go to the clubhouse. But it was not like another world from the other side, general admission. We would sit in the clubhouse. And my dad said, we're always going to the clubhouse because for an extra $2, it's going to keep us away from the degenerate gamblers who would never spend $2 on the clubhouse that they could be spending on a race. And to this day, when I take Jonas to Golden Gate Fields near San Francisco, we spend the extra, it might be $250 now, to go to the clubhouse. My dad and mom spent a lot of each year in maybe 4 months, 5 months in Florida. Maybe 4 months for the last 10 years or so.
Yeah, that's true.
There was a Hard Rock casino down there. Dad. And my dad spent a lot of time there. He loved it. He liked it as much as anything in the world, gambling. And we get calls from my mom every few months, maybe more often. Dad's missing. Mom, he's not missing. We know where he is. Well, he's not picking up my calls. Can't help you with that much. Mom called the police several times. Called the police looking for my dad, who was always were expected at the casino, having fun. The first few times my mom would call us, and she was nervous, and then that nervousness became anger, as time went on. But it's what he liked to do. It was his thing. Mike and his family were visiting for Christmas break. And my dad, at about 6 a.m., said, I need to go drop off the car for servicing. Well, 6 a.m. turned to 7 to 8 to 9 to noon to 2. I think they were all getting a little bit angry with my dad. They kind of, again, had a hunch where he might be. And at about 3 p.m., they were all at the pool. Remember, it's Christmas break down at Hunter's Run, and a lot of grandkids hanging out at the pool, a lot of people around. And my dad walked in the gate, smiling, starting, probably had a hot table or two. And 7-year-old Noah yells out, "Hey, Poppy, I think you have a gambling problem." He probably just explained. It was at a hot table. He did say a couple of weeks ago, I wish I could just sit at a craps table one more time. My dad was incredibly well-read, incredibly well-educated, and probably could have quoted just about anything, any book, any publication, any movie, anything in the world. But I only know my dad to have quoted one thing, and I'm going to read it now. It's not from some high art piece of literature, not from the Bible. It's from the 1984 movie, The Flamingo Kid. And it's a quote that my dad has said often. There are only two important things in life: finding out what you do well and finding out what makes you happy. And if God is smiling on you, they're both the same thing. And this movie's been out since 1984. He's been quoting it since about that long. And I always thought he meant, searching for a career. I think career was just a small part of it. There are only two important things in life: finding out what you do well and finding out what makes you happy. And if God is smiling on you, they're both the same thing. And my dad, he did everything for our family. He worked his butt off from a young man till we were off on our own, Mike and me, and made sure we had everything. And he loved every minute. He came from nothing and just gave us everything. I love him and miss him so much.
Thank you all for sharing so deeply of your hearts with all of us here today. We'll have the opportunity to continue to comfort the Ritigstein family. The family will be returning to Jerry and Hinda's home, 28 Old Mill Drive. I'll be conducting a minyan there tonight at 7:30, and then there'll be visitation tomorrow from 1 o'clock until 4 p.m. Please rise now for the memorial prayers. Malay Rachamim Shochein Mamromim, Hamitzei Menucha Nechona Tachat Kanpei Ashchina, V'malos Kedoshim Atorim Kazor Rakia Masirim Et Nishmat Yosef Ben Meir Shalach L'Olam. Beganein Dehi Menuchato L'chein Ba'arachim Estorei B'Seiter Konfecha L'Olamim, Utzro B'Tzrachim Nishmato, Adonai Nachlato V'Yanuch HaMishkavo V'Namar. Amen. O God, exalted and full of compassion, we pray that you grant perfect peace under the wings of your sheltering presence to the soul of Jerry Ritigstein, who is gone to his eternal home. Master of mercy, we beseech you, remember all the righteous, worthy acts of loving kindness he did for so many for so long, as he graced this, the land of the living. May his soul thus be bound in the bond of eternal life. May he rest in peace. And together we say, Amen. We're going to close our service with the Mourner's Kaddish. Yifkadal v'yifkadash shemei Rabbah, V'alma divrach hirute, v'amlich malchute, b'chayechon u'v'yomechon u'chaye dechol Beit Yisrael, ba'agalah u'bizman kari v'meru amen. Yehesh me rabba mevarach, le'olam omeo maya, yitbarach v'yishtabach, yitbar v'yitramam v'yinaseh, v'yitadar v'yitaleh v'yitalal, Shemei Kudusha B'Yechu, Le'ela Min Kol Birchata V'Shirata, Tushbechata V'Nechemata, Da'amiran V'Alma V'Imru Amen, Yehi Shlama Rabba Min Shemaya, V'Chaim Aleinu V'Al Kol Yisrael, V'Imru Amen, Ose Shalom V'Rama, Hu Yaseh Shalom, Aleinu V'Al Kol Yisrael, V'Imru Amen. You may be seated, please.
Ladies and gentlemen, for those of you who need directions back to the house from the funeral home, they're in the lobby on the podium as you leave the chapel. You folks in this row, can begin to head to our cars, please. You folks in this row. Folks in this row.